All right, just about 30 minutes ago, House Democrats joined with 8 Republicans to oust House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. That vote took place just before I walked into the studio. The House is now in recess as the conference meets. I've got a couple of congressmen, that's a couple of our friends from the Hill, going to join us to give us a quick update. First, Florida Congressman Mike Waltz, member of the House Armed Services Committee, retired Army Colonel. Congressman Waltz, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tony.
I'm just going to your response to what took place 30 minutes ago.
Well, Tony, in a broad sense, I certainly understand the frustration in the sense that Washington has got to change. Our debt is out of control. Our border's out of control. Inflation's out of control. And everyday Americans are suffering. But I have to tell you, I just disagree with these tactics. Just so everybody understands, without a speaker, the House can do nothing. Republicans in the House are the only Republicans in charge of anything in all of Washington. We are fighting against House Democrats, a Senate run by Democrats, and of course, the entire Biden administration. And now, rather than pushing forward measures to secure the border, pro-family legislation. We passed a parental bill of rights. We need to be negotiating and pressing the Senate so that parents can take charge of education. China is breathing down our throat. All of that is ground to a halt now while we deal with this. So, Tony, in the military, we would call this a circular firing squad, or, my daughter's soccer team would call this an own goal. I just think this is incredibly unfortunate, and the happiest people in Washington are Joe Biden, Schumer, and House Democrats right now.
Well, and one reason is because, let me predict something that's going to happen here, and I talked about this yesterday. Without House Republicans moving forward on the appropriations bills, which they will not be able to do now, we are looking at a Democrat-crafted omnibus that is going to be adopted in November. Or if the Republicans can hold them off until December without any type of leadership in the House, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the real irony. I mean, the main justification from Representative Gates, my colleague from Florida, and those that voted with him, was that we're not appropriating the way the Constitution and the law demands us to, that year after year we go to these big omnibus bills, and that's where you'll have the Department of Labor thrown in with the Department of Defense, thrown in with the Department of Homeland Security, and you get these 5,000-page bills. Nobody knows what's in them except a few people. The irony is that's what they're upset about. That's the reasoning for going after McCarthy. Yet by going after McCarthy and grinding our work to a halt, that's likely what we're going to end up getting. And the Democrats in the Senate are going to jam us with it. So that's why I'm so frustrated. Again, I understand. I think we all have the same goal of reforming Washington and getting good conservative policy in place. But I think these tactics will actually move us backwards, and it's putting power back in the hands of the Biden administration and Senate Democrats.
Final question for you, Congressman Waltz. What's next procedurally for the House?
Well, that's a great question. This is the first time in history that this has happened. I expect us to have a Republican conference meeting shortly. We will need to hear from former Speaker McCarthy if he is going to enter the race again, and we could have a situation like we had in January where we go round after round after round. Or someone cuts a deal with Democrats, which is horrific. Or I don't know from there, Tony. And that's what's so frustrating on top of everything else we talk about. There wasn't really a plan.
Right.
I come from the military. I've led soldiers and Green Berets in combat. You have an objective. You have a strategy to achieve the objective, and then you put resources behind it. And, with all due respect to those who are behind this, I haven't seen any of that. I think this was personal, and personal is getting in the way of good conservative policy.
Yeah, I think you're right. Congressman Waltz, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.